Good afternoon, Tobago. Stop whatever you are doing and listen to this broadcast. If you are driving, we advise that you turn the volume up. You may wish to alert your neighbors, your friends, other relatives that this broadcast is on. This broadcast today is being done in English. Alternatively, it's being done in Spanish and with the use of sign language. If in the next few seconds you hear this broadcast in Spanish and you are a native English speaker, it means that you have accessed the wrong broadcast link. Please change the broadcast link for English. Let me repeat. Good afternoon, Tobago. Stop whatever you are doing and listen to this broadcast. If you are driving, you may wish to turn the volume of the radio up. You may also wish to alert your neighbors, and friends, and relatives that this important broadcast is on. This broadcast is being done in English, sign language, and also in Spanish. If in the next few seconds or currently you are hearing this in Spanish, it means that you are on the wrong broadcast link, and that's if you're a native English speaker. Please access the broadcast via the other link. And Tobago and those who are looking on, there are territories in the Caribbean that are currently preparing for the arrival of Hurricane Beryl. At this point, while speaking to you, the hurricane is at Category 4. Tobago, along with our neighbors and family in Barbados, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and Grenada, seem to be in the direct line of attack of this hurricane. Consequently, there is a requirement for us to be very clear with all of you in the public and to ensure that you are prepared. For us here at the Tobago Emergency Operations Center, we are prepared, and we have been preparing over the last 48 hours. We just concluded our final meeting, and the Tobago Emergency Operations Center is now fully open and operationalized, and will remain open and operationalized until the hurricane and its effects have gone, which means that we'll be working around the clock 24/7 until this hurricane and its impact are behind us. I wish to first welcome along with me again this afternoon from the Met Office, Mrs. Decoteau, as well as the Director of TEMA, Mr. Alan Stewart. Mrs. Decoteau will share with us what's happening with the weather system and give us a brief of what we ought to expect. Following which, I will have Director Stewart speak to you about TEMA's preparation, what's happening with our shelters, where they are located, and most importantly, how you should behave before, during, and after a hurricane such as this one. Allow me to introduce to speak to you at this time Mrs. Decoteau, as she shares some critical updates on the weather system we are expecting in the next few hours.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Today, around just after midday, Hurricane Beryl became a Category 4 hurricane, which means that we can expect maximum sustained winds up to 215 kilometers per hour. This system is expected to start affecting us after midnight tonight. However, before that, we may have what is called gust fronts, some strong winds. The major impacts of the system for us in here in Tobago: rainfall, storm surge, strong winds. So in areas, hilly areas especially, the wind is it tends to be about 30 to 40% higher than in areas that are low lying. So persons in those areas should take extra precaution to secure whatever they have outside and so on, to make sure that these things don't become projectiles. We expect, yesterday the forecast was for 50 to 100 millimeters of rainfall with this system. Now we are expecting 3 to 6 inches, or 75 to 150 millimeters. Based on this, we can't expect flooding. The possibility of flooding is very high. We are at an orange level. It is a significant and expected impact of the system. That is for rainfall. Winds, we expect tropical storm strength winds to affect Tobago, and that will be up to 90% to 100% of tropical storm force winds. Hurricane force winds, the possibility is slightly lower. Now this system is just south of Tobago and it's moving in an eastward direction, and I don't know how observant you have been, but this system is actually moving slightly south of the forecast path, which means more than likely we are getting a direct hit from this system. I don't mean to alarm you, but I want people to take this seriously, because there are concerns that people are not preparing enough. And I am telling you that based on the fact that the system is to the south of us, and most of the stronger winds and so is to the north of the system, we are 10.9 degrees, 11.9 degrees north. The system is 10.8 degrees north right now, between 10.8 and 10.9. So that's a whole degree latitude south of us. So as it slowly veers north, that means that we are going to be in that area of strength and strong winds, strong heavy rainfall and so. The other important thing, as we spoke about yesterday, is storm surge. I hope that all the fisher folk have removed and secured their boats and so on, because storm surge is up to 3 to 4 feet of tides and so on, the water level in areas on shore where you have these storm surge coming in, right? So that's something that's very serious, and we may take it for granted because we probably never experienced it in the past in our lifetime, but it is something that is serious, right? So that is the major thing. Is going to start affecting us tonight after 12 p.m. We are in the path of the storm, and we have to use whatever time, the next few hours that we have left, to prepare for this this tropical, well, not tropical storm, it's category 4 hurricane that may actually even strengthen to a category 5 before it reaches us at the rate it is going. Okay, I guess, well, that is the update that we have. We will continue to do the warnings from the Trinidad and Tobago Meteorological Service, but we had the final official statement because this thing is basically upon us. And keep tuned to Trinidad and Tobago Meteorological Service website, as well as we have an app, and we are the source for weather in Trinidad and Tobago. So keep looking for your updates and so on from Trinidad and Tobago Meteorological Service, and be safe.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Dekoto. So you were warned and asked and begged about a month ago to prepare for the hurricane season. We came when there were no hurricanes on the horizon to tell you, put your house in order. We reminded you again yesterday to organize yourself for the arrival of this hurricane, although at that time yesterday it was not immediately clear that we will be in the direct path of the hurricane. Now you are hearing that we are in fact in the direct path of the hurricane. The hurricane is south of where we exist at present, and based on information we have gotten on the storm, on this hurricane, the stronger winds are at the north of the hurricane. We are currently in the direct pathway. I want you to appreciate that this is potentially the most violent storm to hit Tobago since Hurricane Flora hit Tobago directly, not indirectly, directly since Hurricane Flora in 1963. And I just want to share an observation with you. Hurricane Flora was a Category 3 hurricane, not a Category 4. A Category 3 hurricane. Hurricane Flora damaged or destroyed 83% or 6,250 of the 7,500 homes on the island at that time. Hurricane Flora killed 18 Tobagonians. The loss of property and crop was estimated at the time at about $30 million US. About 75% of the trees forming the forest reserve actually fell, while most of the remainder were severely damaged. This is 1963. Now in 2024, today we are expecting a Category 4 hurricane. And in expecting this Category 4 hurricane, we must appreciate that if we are to have the impact today as Flora did in 1963, we will see the destruction of at least 18,000 homes of the 22,000 we have on island. And we will see the displacement of at least 52,000 people. That is if we are to parallel what happened during Hurricane Flora and today. But this is not a cause for panic, because we expect that today the quality of our homes are better built, better located, better positioned, that the emergency response and telecommunication that allowed us to warn you about a month ago and then yesterday, and you had an update earlier about an hour or two ago from Minister Alwari and team down in Trinidad. You have the benefit of information and technology and a lot more going to ensure we can preserve life and preserve property. Therefore, we are asking you to heed every single one of the warnings that we gave a month ago, that we gave yesterday, that came to you this morning, and all of the releases you have gotten from the National Met Services. It's important that you pay attention. It is critical that you don't waste time this afternoon frolicking. Get your house in order. You have to get your house in order. And we are expecting that by 12 a.m., meaning at midnight, as of midnight, we ought to expect this hurricane rather, to make landfall. The Met officer did not say it, but there is a possibility that by the time this hurricane makes landfall, it can arrive at a Category 5. It is a Category 4 at this point, and it has been developing rapidly. I can tell you that while we were speaking to you yesterday, we were projecting that at this point, we will be looking at a Category 3 hurricane passing Tobago. Guess what? We are already at a Category 4 and it has not yet arrived. That should tell you the scale and the magnitude of this thing that we are dealing with. We have met extensively with all stakeholders from across the entire island, and we are prepared. I want to turn our attention to Director Stewart, who will go through the levels of preparedness that we have, what's happening in terms of shelter and shelter management, what our response will be, so that you are reminded that we have systems in place to preserve life and limb firstly, and secondly, to also preserve our property. And we are bearing in mind that the island at this time has an inflated population, because we had a weekend with quite a number of visitors that came to party and to lime and to have fun. And we expect very much in the services that we provide that we take care of citizens, residents on island, visitors to the island, and the immigrant population. And we are also ensuring that we take care of our vulnerable population, those that are elderly, those that require sign language, those that are not mobile. They are also very much in our periphery, very much in our point of view. And so I turn your attention now to Director Stewart.
A very good afternoon to all. Wherever you may be hearing this broadcast, I think it is very important for us to really sit up and pay attention to whatever information that will be disseminated. It is important that as we speak about categories of hurricane and we speak about preparedness, what comes to mind immediately is when this preparation began. For us at Timor, 2 years ago, embracing what is known as making cities resilient, we recognize the importance of inclusiveness, being adaptable, and leveraging and managing our resources to reduce disaster risk. The inspiration went to the angle where fate will have it that I remember communicating to the wider public that we need to prepare ourselves for what we experienced in 1993. And therefore, 2 years ago, we started what you call the CERT 1000 Strong program with this in mind. Today, we are dealing with winds that can be in excess of 130 miles per hour. We are looking at an impact of an event of that magnitude that can be, the reality is that it will happen in the dark of night. And therefore, that being said, it poses a different type of situation. I recall as a young man, my grandmother told me what galvanized sheets look like from a distance. They will look like leaves blowing to your direction. Not until they get close to you, then you realize it's a sheeting. This, ladies and gentlemen, is or will be what we will experience in terms of debris that will be tossed around. However, this will be happening to our dismay in the night. Our preparedness, however, lend itself to us taking certain steps. I commonly will say it's not what happened to you, but how you react to it. And therefore, through our partners, the media included, these messages and alerts need to be carried as far and as wide as possible as to what winds of 130 miles per hour, so we use the term category 4, but we are talking about winds at that speeds and what can happen. What are the type of sub-hazards that can come out of it? We need to look at our utilities. We know that our utilities will be impacted severely. We know that our infrastructure, both our housing stock and other institutions, can be disrupted because category 4 winds of 130 miles per hour in excess of can cause structural damages. And those damages are not, I'm not just speaking about galvanized being blown off, but I'm speaking about roofs being lifted. What will lift this roof can become a missile to even a well-structured building. And therefore that places a certain type of calamity. We understand the displacement, and therefore we have made moves. We came to you speaking about 33 shelters yesterday, but today, based on the decision taken through the executive powers, we have made the move to have all shelters made available to the population. That poses another particular type of challenge. With debris being tossed around, it means therefore that those conditions can also impact even some of our shelters. It means that homes that will be disrupted, that you may have used a shelter as an evacuation center, you may return to dwellings that are no longer there, and therefore sheltering will continue in a particular way. In preparation, we are making whatever available resources, and those resources can come in three parts. One, we ensure that there are MREs at each of the shelters. We ensure that there are cots available for those persons who may wish or may have need to reside within those areas or those shelters, and also the necessary tools that may go along with it. For example, as a result of the disruption of our utilities, there is a strong and very, very powerful reality that our utilities in the areas of lighting and energy will be disrupted as well. That being said, it will have an impact on water, and therefore water is one of the essentials that we'll make available. We are currently constructing a needs list. That needs list will prioritize certain things that will lend itself to power, lighting, emergency supplies, items for ablutionary purposes such as toiletries, and for other appurtenances that may belong to that group of emergency supplies. Roofing. It means therefore that the amount of roofs that will be impacted or anticipated to be impacted, especially those that are along the shorelines of Tobago. For example, on the eastern end of the island, we know the people live on the periphery of the island in most cases, for example, going to the east, and therefore there is a strong possibility that you will be impacted as well. We anticipate, based on the storm surge that was highlighted by your colleague from the Meteorological Service, that wave heights, especially along areas such as Kendall, Argyle, these areas can be impacted. Charlottesville, these areas can see storm surges based on infrastructure, or what I call exposure, that is nested within the reach of these storms, waves that may come across the roadway. There is a strong possibility also, based on the type of rainfall we have been experiencing. Yesterday alone, we were able to check over 30 millimeters of rainfall. I must remind you that in 2004, there were 2 inches of rainfall that brought the catastrophe that we had in Delaford. We are expected to see up to 100 and in excess of 150 millimeters of rainfall. And with that being said, there will be the possibility of flash flooding, slope instability or slope failures. We are talking about landslides that will bring along with it trees, pulling down utility lines, and therefore throughout the island of Tobago, based on the strength of this system, we can see widespread damages. We are making an appeal to shelter managers to match this or mirror this threat in a particular manner. It will require a particular type of attitude. Tomorrow can be like now a different day all entirely. We are preparing ourselves for that. I go back to when I said what we started in 2004. Just 2 years ago, sorry, when we started CERT 1000 strong. The objective was to prepare Tobago for a catastrophic event. Some of you may remember those words when I coined the language of saying the quality is in the quantity. It was like a new awkward statement to make, but it's true. We need numbers. So I'm appealing to the CERT members. We know we have over 600 persons that are considered to be registrant. We know that we have over 200 persons that have been trained over that period to now. And with the resources available to us, we are asking those persons in the aftermath of this, be given the necessary PPEs, the various responses in your community will become very important. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to turn our attention to our special needs. We have a special need registry that has grown over the years since 2007 to about close to 700 persons. Special needs speaks to persons who are not ambulatory in some cases, some are mentally challenged, and some are physically challenged in many other ways, just by mere age. In the aftermath, relief becomes a very important element. We are coordinating. I have been contacted by the UNHCR, which speaks to humanitarian assistance. We will be coordinating through the national office, the ODPM, and also SIDIMA. We just about an hour ago completed meetings with them. They are standing by to provide the necessary help. This event is staggered as a Category 3 event. It means that it exceeds the capacity of the Tobago House of Assembly. It also will exceed the capacity of the national government, and therefore international relief will become an imperative. Yesterday we made the appeal in terms of persons ensuring that they prep themselves for a 72-hour. Given that scenario, it means therefore that you have to pay attention to how you manage your resources going forward and how we move resources to the island. I would have spoken in the past about the logistics just coming out of the OGS, which is Operation Gulfstream. The challenges in moving resources to Tobago is a real one. And therefore, that being said, it speaks to what I'm requesting of our citizenry. However, there were some early discussions with General Smart, who is the CEO of the ODPM. We had some very interesting talks. We spoke about pre-positioning of resources, not only equipment, but also that of human resource. We expect that through the meetings that were held at executive level in Port-of-Spain, that we will see troops from the engineering battalion arriving at the first hour that we're able to make safe sailing to Tobago to provide relief. However, based on our IAP or Incident Action Plan, one of the key objectives is to do rapid assessment and also to provide relief where it is necessary. We understand exactly what is the magnitude of this impact, and therefore we ask persons to take this extremely serious. In recent times of our history, or this generation have not experienced such. Trinidad, I always have to remind my colleagues in Trinidad of 1933. 1933, you would have seen where it was said that we are out of the hurricane belt. And I will remind persons that the hurricane belt begins as low as 7 degrees north of the equator. Tobago is situated at 11 degrees north of the equator. Trinidad, 10 degrees north of the equator. The span between the island is just about 22 miles. And therefore, that being said, the logistics of moving assets to Tobago is one that we have to make strong consideration and pay attention to. And therefore, we are expecting our partners to function in a particular way. Funny enough, I've been reminded by a statement made by Ho Choi Charles, one of my mentors, and he always speaks about if Tobago is impacted by itself, we're good to go, if I'm to paraphrase him. But he also always made the statement, but if Trinidad and Tobago is impacted, and he bring in the part about crapo, smoke, or pipe. I don't want to see that happen, and we have been planning for that not to happen, and therefore I expect that we'll be able to respond even as bad as the impact of this incident is calculated to be. We expect to mount the type of response that will mirror the damages that we have once it's coordinated in an effective and a timely manner. I will pause here.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Director Stewart. So I wish to go through with us all now a list of items that require your attention. And this is essentially Tobago operating in a state of absolute emergency. If it's not clear before, it should be clear to you now. This island of Tobago is in a state of emergency. And here are some things for you to note. 1, healthcare. TRHA has engaged their EOC, and so regular services have been suspended at their health centers. The health centers will not be providing regular services tomorrow. There will be no elective surgeries, no appointments at our hospitals or at our health centers. Instead, the Roxborough Hospital and the Scarborough General Hospital, they will be operating their accident and emergency, and that service will be targeting any mishaps that might happen during the hurricane or after the hurricane. So Roxborough Hospital, Scarborough Hospital, they are our main points when it comes to medical care at this time and going forward. Remember, please don't show up at the hospital in the aftermath of this hurricane seeking your regular appointment. Tomorrow is not a day for your regular appointment. From now going forward, we are treating with accidents and emergencies. So if it's an emergency, of course you go. If there is an accident, of course you go. And Roxborough and Scarborough hospitals will be your point of reference. All schools, both public and private, are closed tomorrow, and they will remain closed until further notice. All schools, public and private, are closed tomorrow, and they will remain closed until further notice. There will be no work for THA staff except for those who are in essential services. Only essential services are required out to work tomorrow, Monday. Who will constitute those in the essential service? One, we are looking at our daily rated workers such as road maintenance crew, public health crew, CPEP and URP, because we will need your efforts to ensure we can keep roadways clear and passable and ensure that people can have access in and out of their homes, to perhaps treat with landslips and floods as an immediate response. Some of our workers in agriculture who must tend to farms and who must monitor farms around the island, you will also be called out in the immediate hours post the hurricane to ensure we do an assessment, one, on private farms and land holdings, but two, to ensure we have government farms and animals that we can minimize loss. We certainly do care about the animals that we have stewardship over. Property managers, and these are those within the THA who are responsible for managing the property assets of the THA. You are expected out tomorrow not to work as per usual, but you are our first line to do an assessment of the damage on state property. So we will need to know from you very early whether the roof is gone, whether the building is usable, so we will know how to inform other staff about when they are expected back to work. But for all other category of workers, you are asked to remain at home tomorrow. I wish to point out that the Division of Infrastructure has taken certain steps to be prepared. So one, they have prepared some staging areas, one between Charlottesville and Speyside, where we have excavator, backhoes, and other such equipment so that we can have a speedy response. We also have on the other side in Palatuvere and the Mason Hall District Office, the Speyside District Office, they are on high alert. We also have equipment stage in Bacolet to be able to respond to what may happen at that Bacolet River, either up at French Fort or lower down the river course. We are also monitoring Crooks River Mall. Sorry, the Crooks River. Please remember that we do have flood warning signals installed along the Crooks River, up at Rockley Vale, and along the Bacolet River up at Frenchfield at the bridge. So we are monitoring. The Division of Infrastructure also went out and cleared all of our water courses along the eastern end of the island. We ensured all the river mouths were open. We checked to ensure that there were no debris brought down from yesterday's weather event. So infrastructure is prepared and ready to respond in a timely manner. We are asking supermarkets and hardwares and variety stores, places like Paradise Store, Stumpy's and so on. We are asking that you remain open for at least the next 3 hours. Give the public at least 3 hours. That will allow the public to have access. Because we presume that there are still some members of the public who still need to get some supplies. So please don't close too early. At least give another 3 hours before you close. We do expect, given we are expecting a category 4, possibility of a category 5, that we will lose some communication. And so TEMA is already prepared with REACT and also the Amateur Radio Society. So we are using traditional radio systems at our shelters to ensure that we can have communication with our communities. Because we are preparing that in the event that Flow, TSTT, Digicel go down, that we still will retain some communication. Here at the Emergency Operations Center, we were fortunate to be gifted with Starlink services. That gift came from TNT Salvage, who is the company that's doing the extraction of the oil in from the vessel. And so the center here will remain with access, with or without the traditional sources of internet, so that we can continue having communication with the outside world. I wish to advise that now is a good time to keep those phones plugged in and charged up. Please charge up all of the power banks that you have. Ensure you have excess or extra batteries for those torch lights. Ensure the lamps have oil. Get the kerosene in excess. If a category 4 hurricane lands here directly, there is a possibility that we will go with more than just a few hours without electricity. That is a possibility. Let us be practical about this. Practically in a category 4, much more category 5, having all the lines up and remain up will be a challenge. So prepare for the worst while praying for the best. I wish to remind all that your documents should be in plastic bags or water sealed plastic containers. You should have tin foods available to you, because if you're without electricity, the refrigeration might be a challenge for you. At our shelters, we ensure all of our shelters will have cots, they will have water, they will have MREs. MRE stands for meals ready to eat. MREs, those will be available at the shelters. We ask that when you go to bed tonight, that you ensure the PJs are the kind that you will be able to go public in. Please sleep properly attired. Be vigilant throughout the course of the night. Be vigilant. Being vigilant means that ever so often you are paying attention to what's happening outside without going outside. Please don't go outside. This is not the time to be an influencer outside. This is not the time to carry up the views on Facebook and Twitter and TikTok. This is not the time to see if you can beat back Elizabeth Williams to be the first to publish the news. This is the time to keep safe and to keep your family safe. So be vigilant, meaning that you are prepared that if something happens to you, the home that you live in, that you can simply take up your ready to go bag or your grab bag and leave. In your bag, please ensure that you have your tin foods close by, water close by, what you can carry. So you're not a mule, you're not a donkey, so you're carrying what can be managed on your back and in your hands safely. Ensure you have your documents close by, especially the important ones that you can't afford to lose. Ensure you have your phones close by, your chargers close by, your medication close by, whether it's your EpiPens, your asthma medication, your antihistamine, especially if you know you have allergic reactions to varying things. So you are preparing yourself to grab your bag and go. Have the necessaries in your bag. Your bag with necessities, of course, cannot contain the house and the land. You can't tote everything. A television is not a necessity. For the young people, your PS4 is not an absolute necessity. Please, I know that is hard to hear. There are much more important things than that, right? If you need to leave, please bear in mind the protocols that should be observed during the storm or during the hurricane. If you are at home and the roof blows off, part of the house is damaged, a landslide broke part of the house, your next response is not to just dart outside, to just run outside. You have to be cautious. People have died trying to escape a broken home during a disaster. So you have to be cautious. Your first shelter must be the closest place of safety. So yes, there are shelters in your community, but chances are where you live from the shelter might be a little distance, and in the peak of the storm, it might be dangerous to walk to that location. Or in some instances, it might not even be possible to drive to that location. Therefore, your immediate place of safety might very well be your neighbor's house. That might save you. It might be one room in the house that still has on the roof and the integrity is intact. That might save you. So you have to make a judgment call in the middle of the hurricane if you realize that there are damages to the house that you are sleeping in or the property that you are residing in. Please let me advise, I know our culture is one where storms and earthquakes and emergencies present themselves with a beautiful opportunity for a beautiful zest. This is not the time for a zest. Avoid the lockdown parties, please. Avoid the lockdown parties, lockdown in your own home, please. Avoid getting locked down in someone else's home, locked down in your own place. Now is not the time to be adventurous and go to sea. We are reiterating the call for fisher folk to bring your vessels to land. We asked fisher folk to do that since yesterday. We're saying it again. Pull up your boat. Take up your boat. Move your boat from the ocean. With the kind of weather we are expecting, there is a strong likelihood, not a strong likelihood, but there will be rough seas. So you are guaranteed rough seas. So please ensure that you protect your assets as much as is possible by moving ahead of time. I wish to also advise that while you are preparing for this hurricane, that we are to remember the Tobago spirit and what it means to be family. And here in Tobago, we say quite commonly that all of us are one family. All of we are one family. Now is the time to put aside petty differences and ensure that you work with your neighbors and you look out for each other. So if this morning, your neighbor picked up the eggs before you got a chance to pick up your own eggs, don't hate the neighbor for that, right? Look out for each other's interests. Be a shelter to each other. We will only get through this safely if we have each other's back. That is important. There is so much that the island government can do. We cannot be everywhere at the same time. We don't have omnipresence as a feature of government. That's a feature of the Most High God, but it's not a feature of government. Therefore, you have to help us help each other and help yourself. As I pointed out at the start, I have had conversations at the national level. So I did have conversations this morning with Minister Alwari, Minister of Rural Development, I think it is. And so we had those conversations. ODPM has been in conversations with us and in our meetings as well. We had meetings with Sidima, that's at the regional level, because we recognize that this is not a Tobago issue, but it's also a regional problem, given that we have 3 or 4 island territories that will be directly impacted. Please look out for each other. Please also remember to be patient and practical in what is expected. Some special pieces of information One, we are working to open the CERT office in Speyside. That will allow coverage there in the Speyside area. The Speyside High School is open, and we have as a backup plan the multi-purpose facility in Speyside. In Charlottesville, I know you called yesterday when you did not see a shelter for you on the initial list, but there is a shelter for you there at the Charlottesville Methodist Primary School. Also, we are deploying assets to the Charlottesville Health Center, where we usually have a relief operation, that's stationary there. In Charlottesville, and I'm just saying this, and I'm hoping that Mr. Hackett hears, Dexter Hackett hears, that we are having reports that at the Man of War Bay cottages that they have full occupancy this weekend, which means those little cottages along the beach, they are fully occupied. Therefore, in your operations, pay attention to them. Village councils, I want you to hear me clearly. Now is not the time to go village counseling the way you are accustomed doing village council. Now is not the time to behave as though the community center is your house and it belongs to you. It belongs to the community. Now is not the time to walk around the center in the middle of the shelter and look to put people out because somebody running up and down the place. No, it's not time for that. Now it's time to accommodate the community as the need arise. We have village councils around the island who will usually commit and say, yes, we will open up, we will be there, and then they will not be present. All of our centers must be open. As a matter of fact, from around 4 p.m. this afternoon, I am doing a quick tour going up the north side and coming around Hermitage and coming down along the eastern coast, looking at these shelters. Please open up the people shelter. Open it up for the people, please. Ensure that they are available. Additionally, we added earlier today the Methodist School in Collar Hall as an additional center. The Methodist School is adjoined by property line to the multipurpose center in Collar Hall, and so the Methodist School will also be a shelter in that area, because we recognize that in the absence of a community center for Bacalet, Scarborough, that there might be a need for an additional center that will cater for all the people from Bacalet, Scarborough, and also the Friendsfield area. We are doing all we can to ensure that you remain safe and that we provide all the necessaries for you. We will keep this line open as far as possible, meaning we will communicate with you via lives, via conferences, with or without the media, because we will want to broadcast information to you throughout the night into tomorrow. We are preparing ourselves for not just the passing of the hurricane, but we are preparing ourselves for a post-hurricane operation. We are behaving as if the hurricane will come, it will be at its worst, and we have to respond. That's the kind of preparation that we are putting in right now. I wish to say thanks to the Defense Force, the Trinidad and Tobago Fire Service, the TTPS who are working along with us, and for whom we have provided some additional vehicle assets so that we can be present all around the island and that we can respond quickly. In the first instance, the preservation of life is priority. After that, it will be the preservation of property, in particular public property, especially access, road access will be important. We want you all to pay strict attention to what is expected of you. Please and thanks. And of course, if you know street dwellers, let them know that the shelters are open to them as well. The streets won't be safe tonight for anyone. The shelters, we are asking the shelters to be open from 5 p.m. as Mrs. Decoto pointed out, we expect some gusts of wind prior to the arrival of the hurricane. So we want to open the shelters from as early as 5 p.m. In Roxborough, the folks living in the Renaissance know that we also did some staging in that area, and we are prepared, and we are monitoring that river running alongside the Renaissance, alongside Roxborough Secondary School and the hospital, to ensure that that area remains flood free during the passage of this hurricane. Right? Critical, critical. And finally, I'll say this before we take our questions. All area representatives, my line is open to you as per usual. But I want to say it for the area representatives that are in the minority, that my line is also open to you. This is, as far as I am concerned, an island-wide emergency response, and so I now consider you as part of my team going forward. And the same bits of information that I will share with my team, I will begin to share with you hereafter. I will touch base with you to ensure that all is well in your respective area. I am advising all area representatives to do a drive-through of your communities, of your districts, and ensure that everything is in place. If something is out of place, let us know early so we can try to remedy it, please. We are depending on you, and be reminded that there may be a possibility that we may have districts and or communities that may end up being cut off from the rest of the island, and that might require, if you are within that zone, that you exhibit a certain level of leadership in ensuring that communities remain safe and that they respond appropriately and accordingly. So we are open for questions at this time from members of the media, and we'll take all questions.
Good afternoon, Chief Secretary. I just came from the Scarborough port, where apparently after the cancellation of all sailings on Monday, we would have had visitors rush to the port to try to get on. I would have spoken to a number of them who were supposed to get on the 1:30 but did not. But they are concerned that they may not get on the 6 p.m. So they are wondering if the TAJ is putting anything in place to put them into a shelter at 6 p.m. if in the event they are left behind. And we are talking about teenagers and young adults, as well as adults who don't have anywhere to stay in Tobago.
So our shelters are open for all, including the visitor on our island. Those of you who might end up being stranded in Tobago, and perhaps you can't get a hotel room somewhere, or you can't get back your guest room that you were in. I would think that if you are a guest at my establishment, that I will firstly provide the extra night to you, if needs be. But if that is not possible, our shelters are open to you. For those that are stuck at the port, what we will do is that I will have a technical officer either from TIGMA or the THA visit the port at the time of the 6 p.m. sailing, so that those who are there, we can marshal them safely into one of our shelters so that they can be secured. They can park safely and they can be secured for the duration of the night. Mr. Leacock?
Good afternoon, George Leacock, Radio Tambrin. I wanted to find out, Tobago is oddly shaped and placed on a map, but is there an indication of what direction people would expect to start feeling winds from as the storm starts?
Rotations, it will come from the south.
So 1 second, we're just thinking it through. So it will be more than likely southeast Tobago, which will be windward side of the island first, will first be hit. Remember, she pointed out that it's currently at 10 degrees north, 10.9 degrees north, and Tobago is located 11.9 degrees north. So in other words, we are an entire 1 degree above where the hurricane is currently positioned. The strongest winds are expected to be on the northern part of the hurricane system, right? It is plummeting in our direction. We do expect the hurricane to slightly start inching northwards as it comes in our direction. And Tobago being oddly shaped, if I may use this as the island map, in this way, and the storm is coming this way with its counter prevailing winds coming this direction. We very much expect southeast to be first hit. So along the windward side of Tobago, along the windward road of Tobago, essentially, should first experience those winds. Of course, we will do an update later on in the evening, when the hurricane is even closer to us, as to where.
So as the hurricane progresses over us, the wind directions will change, because remember, it's a cyclone, right? So as it comes over us, it will come from different directions. After coming from the southeast, it will come from the north and then the west. So we really can't say that, okay, it's going to come only from the east or the southeast as with normal rainfall, right?
Given the current pace at which the hurricane as a unit is traveling, how long do we expect it to stay impacting Tobago?
Well, the initial impact, as we were saying, will be from after 12 tonight, and then the rainfall and so should start affecting us between 1 and 2 a.m. And then, so during that time, you'll have showers, torrential rain, isolated thunderstorms, and then after that, we will have the stronger winds behind it and the feeder bands as it passes. So basically, from after 12 tonight till about 11-12 tomorrow. But remember, with these systems, sometimes you have subsidence, like today you have good weather after. Sometimes it will trail and you will have the feeder bands affecting us. So it could go as late as tomorrow afternoon, right? So it could be like a 6 to 8 hour period, but the maximum amount of time with the rainfall and so should be 4 to 5 hours. But just 1 hour with a large CV, one large thunderstorm over us could be devastating.
And leads to my final question. I recall people saying that at Hurricane Flora, there was a period of disturbed weather and there was an eye. And people came out during that period thinking that the hurricane was over. And then it seems as though more people may have even lost their lives when the activity started again. Could you spend a moment on possibility again? Because we have a history of having challenges with that.
Right. So I think people watch enough movies and talk about it coming out in the eye of a storm and whatever, but I think we should know, as we said, once communication stays up, we keep ourselves glued to whatever media we have to get information. But once there's a lull, as we said, once it starts passing tonight, basically, and unfortunately it's passing in the night, so people will not even see what is coming, right? So even if there's a lull, you should wait at least 2-3 hours before you decide to go out, because just as it's clear now, if it's in the morning, you might have that period of clearing and then the next part of the storm is going to come. So people need to be serious and not just run outside as soon, oh, rain stop and we're going outside. No, wait for your alerts, listen to what is going on and whatever information is being given. And even if you don't have communication available, you would be able to see, as I said, if it's during the day, that something else is coming. So give it some time before you run outside and decide, okay, the storm has passed, right? Just remember that, as you said, with the eye of the storm, the calm, and then the next part comes and the devastation, especially with areas near the ocean and so with storm surge and large waves and that kind of thing. Right?
And just to add something else for consideration, we got considerable amounts of rainfall yesterday. From the night before into yesterday, considerable amounts of rainfall because of a trough that passed over us. As a matter of fact, we estimated that we got perhaps between 50 and 100 millimeters of rainfall based on where on the island you were located. It means that the earth is properly well saturated still, and it means that in some areas, areas that are prone for landslips, that we will get landslides because it's much easier now for earth movement because of the quantity of rainfall we got yesterday. So bear that in mind. So if you are living in an area that is precarious, that you had landslips before, you will want to be on the watch out in the event that you need to move expeditiously. I see hands online from Cummings, so I'll take Cummings first.
Yes, good afternoon, Chief Sec and members of the head table. I just have two questions. One, Chief Sec, maybe you can take the first, and I'll turn the other question over to Mr. Koto, I believe. First question, Chief Sec, I've noted what you've said, that Tobago is now in a state of emergency, in terms of your exact words. Have you had any direct conversation with the Prime Minister, Dr. Keith Rowley? Now, I know that you have also said that you've had discussion at the national level with Minister of Rural Development and the team, but I'm wondering if there's any continuing conversation with the Prime Minister. That's one. And Mr. Koto, sometimes there's a confusion in respect of understanding the differences between or what is a cyclone and what is a hurricane and even what is a typhoon. Can you, for the benefit of us who are not so learned, explain to us, what are the differences and what are these really, as we're talking hurricanes and what is the relationship among these different terminologies? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. With regards to your first question, at this point, the Prime Minister and I have not had a conversation as yet. More than likely, should it be warranted, it will happen. We did speak during the oil spill and the management of that and the cleanup of that, and I expect that should the hurricane hit us the way we are currently expecting, that conversation will happen. But we have been having the conversations with the central government and the Tobago House of Assembly, and perhaps this is a good example for neighbors, right? That you can in fact be at odds with your neighbors, but in moments like this it requires conversation, collaboration, and looking out for each other. And even as I'm answering that question, I saw the question pop up of whether or not the hurricane will be hitting Trinidad, and I'll ask the Met officer that as she is speaking to your question, that she speaks to whether or not Trinidad will be hit by the hurricane. Trinidad is under tropical storm watch, and so that comes with its own meaning.
Okay.
So, what you?
All right, so I'll answer the last part of your question first. Trinidad will be indirectly hit by the storm. More than likely, they will get feeder bands affecting them, and as they are under a tropical storm watch, which is what we started off with yesterday, they have a 30 to 40% chance of having the experience of tropical storm force winds and conditions. They will definitely get some showers and thunderstorms, especially in the northern areas, because that's the area that is closer to Tobago. And basically that's it for them. I don't think that they will be so unfortunate to have the ITCZ pulled up by this, because we have another system behind it as well. Yeah, that's it for that part of the question. Now, Mr. Cummings, you asked about hurricane, cyclone, typhoon. All three, the common factor is that they have a closed circulation. They move in a anticyclonic Well, the outward flow of a hurricane is an anticyclonic flow at the upper levels, cyclonic at the lower levels. A typhoon is not for our area, that is for like the Asia and so on, right? They have typhoons. Our equivalent to that is a hurricane. And of course, a hurricane will be more than a storm. The initial formation of a hurricane comes with a closed circulation, and that closed circulation is the first stage after a wave and then depression. Once it has a circulation that is closed, it becomes a depression and then a storm. So the common factor here, they all have closed circulations at the surface. I don't want to go too much into the dynamics of it, because some of these things you have warm core, some have cold core, and that kind of thing. So basically they are all different types of storms, but across different areas of the globe. So for us, a cyclone is a hurricane and a typhoon, but for us, our type of cyclone is a hurricane. I don't know if this explains it for you, or if you need any more elaboration on anything.
Thank you. Before I take in the other question, a question came in: is it still safe to sail? The answer is yes, and that's because the boat will arrive in Port of Spain before the hurricane gets here. Secondly, we are seeing that establishments are beginning to open later. So for example, Double B Enterprise, or Bill Brown as we know them, they have just announced that they will be open from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. They'll be open till 6 p.m. Today. Stompies, they are going till 4:30 p.m. and hopefully they extend it a bit more. Candice Jackson.
Hi, good afternoon, Chief Secretary, and to the panel. My question is in regards to the statement that, this emergency, the hurricane, is going to be exceeding the capacity of Tobago as well as its central government, and obviously international help will be needed. But I'm also noting, remember, it's also going to be affecting the other islands. What's been the conversation like at even with Sedima and so on to ensure that Tobago does get some priority? Because we know that this is going to affect Grenada, St. Vincent, and these other islands in a pretty bad way as well.
All right, so the meetings have been held with Sedima in particular, and other regional agencies. TIMA and Tobago House of Assembly have been represented in those meetings, and those meetings were essentially to get from us in Tobago what will be our needs list. Essentially, what will we need post the hurricane should this become a reality. So they do have that needs list from us, so that should the hurricane arrive here in the way that we are currently expecting, and it does damage, they know exactly what we need, and they are preparing channels to get those needs to the island as soon as possible. So that's the nature of the conversation, literally to look at what Caribbean territories that will be impacted by this will need, and ensuring that they begin to pull those things together so that at a moment's notice they can be delivered to the island for a response. The issue with this requiring a response beyond just Trinidad and Tobago is that usually, and I don't want you to report that we are getting ahead of ourselves. Usually, a disaster of this magnitude, the one that we are expecting, will dictate that we move from levels 1 and 2 response, or tier 1 and 2 response, to tier 3 response. And a tier 3 response will see CARICOM and international agencies get involved. We also had meetings with United Nations and their respective agency that treats with disaster preparedness as well. So we are having those conversations at the national level, at the international level, and also at the local level. So at all levels, we are ensuring that we are prepared and ready for a response. Carissa Douglas.
Good afternoon. I just have one question. Earlier today at the press briefing in Trinidad, we were informed that sandbags will be distributed through regional corporations. I know that question was raised during yesterday's press briefing, and please correct me if I got it wrong, that we were told that there are no provisions like that from the THA's level to provide sandbags for Tobagonians. And I know the Chief Secretary also even explained that we could make our own sandbags through Cockers Bag and Sand. With that being said, through conversation with the ministers and ODPM, have there been any discussion to have sandbag sent up from Trinidad so that Tobagonians will also have that being offered to them as well?
Okay, so let me give clarity. It is, remember, in Trinidad, sandbags are provided as needed from local government. In Tobago, the Tobago House of Assembly is both the local government and perhaps I would say the national government for the state that is Tobago, for want of a better term. Or perhaps that's the best term. For want of the nation state, that's Tobago. So we're both local government and the state government. It is not that sandbags are not available. Sandbags are available. But we are not just giving out sandbags to just drop down any and everywhere. The sandbags are available. The sandbags are prepared. And the sandbags are deployed by TEMA in areas where TEMA expect there to be floods. So we're not just dropping sandbags home by people's residents indiscriminately. The sandbags are being managed properly. In fact, we have technology that's above the sandbags. We have the soaker bags. The soaker bags, that's SOAKA bag. Those bags, when deployed in the water, they automatically swell up themselves and act like a sandbag. So what we have are those bags. We put them down in the wet space, and as we put them down, the water activates them. They become enlarged, and as they become enlarged, they prevent water from flowing in or out. So we have a lot of soaker bags as well. But as I said, TEMA is actually deploying those. So it's not that sandbags are not available. It's just that we're not just handing them out willy-nilly to residents, but we are carefully deploying them in the areas where sandbags are needed, where flooding is expected. And we do have that list of areas where we do, in fact, expect floods to happen.
We have been doing so.
And as a matter of fact, TEMA has been doing so for the morning. So already we have been deploying those soaker bags in the areas that we expect flood. So it's as part of our standard operation. The areas we expect flood, we go out, we ensure that the soaker bags are there, and we are ready to deploy them accordingly. Right? Turner?
Yes.
Right, I think right. So Turner, go again, please. You are muted. I think we had a slight technical. Right, go ahead.
Yeah, I got a call coming in that probably cut the audio. I was asking for clarity from Mr. Kotu. We are hearing that the final advisory in this format from the Met Office came earlier today. Just trying to get clarity going forward. How would further bulletins be issued? Would it only be via the app and the Facebook page of the TTMS? Just to clarify that particular question. And my second question, I'm not too sure whether you would take it, Chief Secretary, or 9 Yankee 5 Tango Hotel Alpha 1. VINLEC in St. Vincent has announced that they are going to be shutting down the national grid overnight. And we are seeing now also that in Grenada, Nawassa is also planning to shut down their water systems from 9 p.m. What's going to be the situation here? Are we going to see similar shutting down of utilities like that here, or will they simply remain up as long as they are functional?
I thank you. So, Mr. Dekoto, you go first, and then I'll take the final question.
Mr. Turner, right. I think you misinterpreted the fact that what we said is the final official statement, because this is the last status update on the storm unless it becomes a higher category storm before it reaches us. And after that, well, we know that the storm is coming towards us, right? But we will continue to have updates in terms of the warning and the, so for example, the orange level could go to a red level, which is a certainty that this is going to happen and so on, right? So we will continue to have the warnings issued and updates to the warnings, which is something that is part of the common alerting protocol, which we use to issue our warnings, right? So we will continue to have the warnings, but the statement, the official statement for whatever general purpose, that is the last one, unless, as I said, it becomes a higher category storm, hurricane before it hits us.
I thank you. Mr. Turner, the public utilities in Tobago have not indicated that they desire to use that approach. Their approach is to keep running until the system is knocked out. The circumstances on those other islands might be different. The grid network might be a bit more fragile than ours. But the decision at this moment is to keep going until such time as the hurricane knocks it out. Should that change, it will be communicated to you. I need to provide clarity on one other matter before we close. And the question came in, Chief Sec, is there an official SOE? And if so, has the THA issued a shutdown from what time tonight to tomorrow? So I want to be clear. My declaration that Tobago is in a state of emergency does not carry the same connotation as the President declaring a state of emergency. My declaration of such for the island of Tobago is to ensure that all government services, all public services and private services and business on the island operate with the level of urgency that is required on island. The policy for the Tobago House of Assembly actually says that a declaration has to be made by the Chief Secretary, and only upon such a declaration that things like relief for farmers and fisher folk will kick in. And so it is important for THA operations and THA regulations that declaration be made. And so I made that declaration. We are asking for the public, as far as is practicable, to be off the streets by 7 to 8 p.m. tonight. Don't wander. Don't lie on the block until 11:59 p.m. and then try to hustle home. Between 7 and 8 p.m., get home and be off the nation roads unless you are required to be on the nation roads. Please do not provide additional work for our servicemen at this time. We will hate to see that at 8 p.m. or at 9:30 or 10 p.m. we are dealing with an accident because somebody was drunk liming somewhere. We want you to be home. Get home as soon as is possible, please. Get home as soon as is possible, please. And thanks. Mr. Stewart?
I just would like to share a bit on the issue as it relates to a state of emergency in regards to such a hazard. What you have is a hazard that is posing an imminent threat to not just area of Tobago, but the whole of the island itself. And therefore, where there can be established that you have an imminent threat, means therefore it's not a question of whether it will or may not happen. It's speaking to the strongest possibility based on the warning that within 24 hours the island of Tobago will be impacted by a particular hazard that can be catastrophic. And therefore it's important where you have these standard set that you make those declarations before the event. I'm not sure if some of us remember Katrina, in that you may be impacted, and the impact could be so severe that you are not in a position to make the declaration, meaning therefore communications are severed to the point where you cannot communicate with the person who you wish or the agency that you wish. And therefore we don't want a situation where for example, the national government is wondering what is happening in Tobago if that level of devastation take place. We are signaling almost immediately based on the advisories from technically on the ground, based on the threat, the imminent threat of the hazard, that this is being declared, and therefore it's something that are standard throughout the world, where you make a declaration based on these type of imminent threat. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I wish to again reiterate that we are stronger together. We are in this together. There is no rich or poor. There is no tongue man, no countryman. The rain does not fall on one man's housetop, and the wind will not blow one man's fruit trees. All of us will be impacted in one way or the other. Key coming out of this must be the preservation of life and limb, and of course property, starting with property that we own as a collective, public property. Ensure that during this ordeal that is to come, that you keep vigilant. That is critical. Keep vigilant. If you have young children in your care, please pay attention to them during the course of the night. Your parent, get up intermittently and check on them, check on their room, ensure that they're not getting wet, that they're not exposed to the elements. Ever so often, fathers, daddies, husbands, ensure that you are paying attention to the protection of your households. Mothers, ensure that you are right there alongside daddies and husbands. And if you're a single parent, then you know you have to do this alone. But also call up the extended family during the course of the night. Check in with each other, see how each other is doing, and just ensure we take care of each other as much as is possible. Should this pass us directly, the days following will be some hard days. That's just the reality. But we are to prepare for them and meet it with a level of patience and logical thinking, clear thinking, so as to ensure that we provide the best service for the island in the days afterwards. Employees of the Tobago House of Assembly, please note that in the hours post the hurricane, that you may be called upon to work in areas that you weren't originally designated to work in. As a matter of fact, as part of the law and the regulations governing the public service, you may be called at any time to work in an area outside of the area that you would normally work in. It's part of the reason why, as a public servant, you can't leave the country. You should not leave the country without first informing your relevant supervisors. It is why even teachers are told when they are going on vacation that you ought to only leave the country after first seeking permission to do so. And that's because the law and the regulations allow that you can be called to work in areas that you don't ordinarily work in. So it means, therefore, that in the days post this event, you may be called upon to do service in areas that you won't ordinarily do service in. Let us put our shoulders to the wheel collectively and get the work done. Protect ourselves, protect each other, protect the island's assets, protect our visitors in our midst. So our visitors, we are here for you as well. As I indicated, if you traveled to the island from Trinidad and you are now stranded in Tobago. If you travel to the island from elsewhere and you are stranded in Tobago, we will have an officer or two at the port in Scarborough this evening at around the time of the 6 p.m. sailing, so that you can be marshaled to an appropriate place, housed there, and we can ensure that you remain safe and sound. All right? So thank you very much. You can reach out to the operations center here at Fairfield Complex at any time. We are operating on a 24-hour basis. Director Stewart will be here, save and except if he's doing field work. I will be here as well, save and except if I'm out doing field work. We have other officers who will be here, but throughout the night, I will be here in service working along with the workers. So let's pray for each other. And perhaps a good way to end might be with a short prayer. That might be a good way to end. So wherever you are, let's just have a word of prayer, please. Almighty, we thank you and we rely on you for our sustenance. We rely on you for our protection. We rely on you for your guidance during this period. And we pray, Almighty God, that you will send all the protection that is required at this time, that you will protect Tobago at its four corners, that you will protect our people, you will protect our assets, that you will protect us in our going out and our coming in. Protect our workers who must work during this time. Protect our people, our emergency operation center. Protect our medical staff who will be out working around the clock. Ensure that our operations at Roxborough Hospital and Scarborough Hospital continues without fail. Protect our shelters that are scattered all around the island and those who will be in our shelters. Protect our homes. And we pray, dear God, that Tobago will come away from this celebrating the fact that you, our God, protected us during this time of our need. Continue to bless us, we pray, and we recognize you as the Lord over this island. We ask these things through the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen and amen. And so wherever you are, in whatever faith you believe in, pray for the best while we prepare for the absolute worst. Thank you, and God's richest blessings.
First time in the history of June, a Category 4 hurricane has formed in the Atlantic Ocean, and this storm is going to bring a ton of problems to areas like the Lesser Antilles, eventually through parts of the Greater Antilles, and then this could eventually impact areas in the United States. So in today's forecast, we're going to break down everything that you need to know about this hurricane and why this is really that big of a deal here, as we are just at the end of June, and something like this has never happened in the recorded history of the Atlantic tropics. So let's begin with what Hurricane Beryl looks like right now, which right now it looks crazy on the infrared imagery. If you remember, we had a video like